What's up, Degenerate Nation? Welcome to the Big Bets on Campus podcast. This is the ACC College Football Betting Preview Part 1. I'm Stuckey. Joining me, as always, my fellow BBOC co-host, Collin Wilson. Today, we will hit the ACC plus Notre Dame. Notre Dame will be at the end of Part 2, in addition to our summary of our favorite bets in the ACC and our picks to win the conference. This is the fourth Power 4 conference preview episode we've recorded in 5 days, 2 parts each, go about like 10 hours. I've gone through every single player on every single roster overnight. I've slept like 2 total hours over the last 5 days, chasing down any news, practice reports, making sure I didn't miss any injuries.
The injuries happen when we record, like
the whole week.
I mean, like we were recording TCU last night.
TCU's safety we were talking about, Fields gets kicked off puts one of his teammates. Sonny Dykes is talking about how this team's so close. Well, Fields, their safety, put one of his teammates in the hospital, beat him up in the locker room. There was always word he was he was Conference USA Defensive Player of the Year. There was always rumblings that he was a little crazy. So we'll see.
Rumblings are now a quake. And then for everybody else that's listening, like when we did the SEC, we were talking about Trevor Gooseby, and we were prepping him up, and then he went down. So my question is, what ACC player are we going to talk about this podcast that is immediately going to get hurt when this is released at 2:00 in the morning?
Well, interestingly enough, if you just look at the quarterbacks in the ACC, I mean, there is, as I think, like almost more than any other conference, the drop from the starters to the backups are pretty significant. I mean, and we're going to talk Notre Dame. Notre Dame's probably the biggest drop in the country. If Carr gets hurt, it's all over with their backup situation with Minchie. I mean, you're talking like if Notre Dame, I want to bet Notre Dame to go undefeated, but I'm afraid that Minchie will get hurt. I mean, Carr will get hurt, and then it's like a 10. It's like a 10. It could be like a 10-point drop to the backup. And then like Miami.
Oh yeah, yep.
Is that like a touchdown? Cal with JKS, that could be like more than a touchdown. NC State, and then like
NC State doesn't have anything else except CJ Bailey.
Yeah, I mean, and yeah. So we'll get in. Let's get into the ACC somehow. And by the way, if you haven't checked it out, we've already done the SEC in 2 parts. We've already done the Big Ten in 2 parts. We've already done the Big 12 in 2 parts, and we already did the entire G6. This will be the finish of all 138 teams, as in-depth as you'll find on any podcast, covering every team every summer. And the action won't stop. We'll recap all of our best bets with Duck and Breeze next week. We'll have an award show, and then it'll be week 0. I mean, it's almost here. But the ACC, the last conference we will do, they have an odd schedule. You'll have 12 teams play 9 ACC games and 1 Power 4. You'll have 5 teams in the league play 8 ACC and 2 Power 4. They fixed their tiebreaker rules because Miami was left out, and for the better. I mean, they'll have the right tiebreakers this year to get the best teams in. There are 3 new head coaches: James Franklin down in Blacksburg at Val Tech, Josh Lapoy at Cal, Stanford with Pritchard, the new head coach there. There's a lot of new quarterbacks. I think 12 teams will have new quarterbacks. About half have new OCs, half have new DCs. And you're going to have to help me get through this because I want to fade every team in the conference. I want to take every under, which is impossible because some of them have to go over. But I don't like the ACC has become like a feeder ground to like the SEC and the Big Ten for anyone that's good. And like I think it's going to be a rough year for a lot of teams, but someone has to win some games.
This conference, if you ever played the board game Risk growing up, this conference is South America. Like it's got attack points and it can't escape. Like in Australia, you can fortify. For those of you who play Risk, like a great game to piss everybody off in the family, right? Because you tag up. But essentially, the SEC and the Big Ten are ready to come in and devour the top half of this conference and leave the rest to go to the American or whatever the hell is going to happen. and they're trying to stick it in a build. I mean, there's going to be movement at some day, like Florida State, Clemson, UNC. They're going to move on to the SEC. The Big Ten are going to get some people. But you're right. Like, there is a very large discrepancy. It's extremely top heavy with just a couple teams. And then there's at least double digit teams that don't know what they're doing, don't have enough money, can't get the players. The bottom half of this league is getting worse, which is
the middle, I think, is getting worse too.
Yes. In the middle is yes. It's getting more watered down in the middle.
Yeah, it's pretty ugly. I mean, I can find a reason to fade every single one of these teams. There's only one team I want to bet the over on. But let's start with Miami. Miami's win total over 10.5, heavily juiced to the over. They are the clear-cut favorite in the ACC. They're odds-on favorite, about minus 150 to win the conference. One of the reasons is they have way more money than everyone else. I mean, some reports you never really know. They're spending like $50 million on the roster, and the other teams in the ACC, some are spending like 10, 15. There's no one over 30. I mean, so they're spending like 2 times, 3 times as much as anyone else. Go ahead.
Our favorite reporter out there has said it's a blank check, which basically whatever Cristobal wants, Cristobal is going to get. And I think that was the part of the deal of him coming there, and they've been exercising that.
Yep. So there are some questions on this roster. I mean, like, look, they have money, so they can go into the portal. They get ridiculous recruiting classes, top 10 incoming class in terms of the portal and incoming freshmen. But they lost. I mean, they had 9 players drafted, which is the most since 2001. And by the way, Miami has never won the ACC, which is still pretty crazy to think about. But they're minus 150 to do it this year. They lost, right? Like, they're a center to the NFL, a right tackle, Maui Noah in the first round, a 3-year starting right guard. They're 2-year starting left tackle. There's 7 players in total that went to the NFL, 5 drafted on this offense. You also lost Marion and Daniels, your tight end, Bauman. So, and then obviously Carson Beck. But they go in, they get Darian Mensah from Duke, one of the most sought-after quarterbacks in the portal. Some may argue it could end up being an upgrade, but there are questions along the offensive line, right? You look at this offensive line, there's a lot of talent. You're going to have McCoy back, who's going to be moving to tackle, I assume. You're going to have Pancake Concho moving to tackle potentially. And then you could have 2 true freshmen starting, Cantwell and Congdon. I mean, this, regardless of how they sort this out, the offensive line is going to be massive. I mean, like 330, 340, even these true freshmen 5 stars. And then, you have your Rodriguez as a senior at center. There could be a battle at right guard between Buchanan and Georgia transfer and Merriweather. I think regardless, the offensive line is going to take a step back, but it's still really talented. It's what Mario Cristobal does.
And they've got depth with Okunlola.
Yeah, they got depth.
There's a couple other names. Like they've got some depth here, and they can move those pieces around whenever if they have injury.
Yep. So, but you lost 2 or 3-year starters, a bunch to the NFL. So there could be some growing pains. In order to replace some of the losses at receiver, they bring in Jacobs from South Carolina, Cooper Barkate, Mensah's teammate at Duke. So, yeah, I mean, look, this team is pretty loaded. They could even have some freshman wide receivers, and Wingo and Upshaw contribute. Their tight end depth did take a hit with Gilbert getting hurt. He's out for the year. But, I mean, this is clearly the best team in the ACC.
And you haven't mentioned the cheat code Malachi Toney. I mean,
Malachi Toney, yeah.
Then you get Cam Ward, Carson Beck, Darian Mensah, and then you get Malachi Toney doing that as a freshman. That you don't see that often.
Yeah, defense brings back a lot more than the offense, but the main question there is you have to replace Bain and Messidor off the edges, who were just complete menaces. You bring in Wilson from Missouri. You have some younger guys, some depth pieces that you want to step up, but the rest of the defense is pretty talented. I mean, I have this team. I'm lower than the market on Miami, and the closest team I have to them, some have the closest team 10 plus points away. The closest team I have to them is SMU, and I have SMU power rated, let's see, about 8 points. I have Miami power rated 8 points behind Miami. So I have Miami favored on a neutral by over a touchdown against every team in this league. And you're talking like the bottom of the league. You know what I make Miami versus BC on a neutral? 26. 26. So I might make it higher because they might be higher on Miami. Also, Miami plays 6 of the bottom 7 in the league. They avoid SMU. They avoid Louisville.
Yeah.
They get nobody off of a bye. Their season basically comes down to at Notre Dame, which they'll probably be like a touchdown plus dog given the spot and how good Notre Dame is. And then at Clemson. And then do they trip up elsewhere? I bet the under. I went on a rant about this a couple weeks ago. I can do it again. But Cristobal has 12 losses as a touchdown plus favorite over the past 8 years at Oregon and Miami. He's had at least one every single year. And sometimes multiple losses as a 7+ point favorite. And many as a double-digit favorite. And you could go all the way back to like his days at ULM. And I mean, the only time it didn't happen is in 2012, but he was only favored once as a 24.5 point favorite against Akron, and the game went to overtime. His teams are just going to have a game where they don't show up and then they lose. Like, and I can't pick it out where it is. So I'm banking on that, and I make it 10.45. So at 10.5 under at plus money, I did it. It's not that I don't love it because the ACC is so weak, but I think they lose at Notre Dame, and I think they just drop another one. And then they're good. They go 10-2. They get to the ACC championship, and they're going to be big favorites. But they probably need to win it because if they go 10-2 with this schedule and then lose the ACC championship, they're probably out. I mean, defense is loaded. Young guys, there's going to be 5 stars that emerge. The cornerback has tons of depth. You know, Fitzgerald and Poyser are going to be great at safety. You bring in Thornton to play the nickel. It's just really like, how does the offensive line shake out? And what is the drop off from Bain, Messidor to like Wilson and Lightfoot? How big is it? Regardless, they're going to be the best team in the league. What are you seeing on Miami?
Well, I trust that Corey Heatherman's going to get it figured out on the defensive side of the ball. I know that replacing those 2 edges is going to be tough, but there is talent behind them. It's just not experienced talent. So we'll see what they come out with. I think one thing that you're not handicapping is the fact that Mario Cristobal can lose a game all by himself between his clock management, his decision-making. Like, that could be responsible for a loss too. I think instead of trying to handicap them at a national level, I was more focused on the ACC. And I love Darian Mensah coming in, right? I mean, it's the explosiveness of Cam Ward, but with a lot less mistakes. Now, Mensah does have 16 fumbles in 2 past seasons in FBS play. He's got to cut down on that, but he does make better decisions than Cam Ward did when Cam Ward came in. And Malachi Toney's coming in his second season, 139 targets as a freshman, 10 TDs. I mean, just unbelievable. Moton's going to be good on the defensive tackle. So there's a lot of things about this team. They are best in class in the ACC. So let's take the national picture out of this because I want to handicap and bet on something that is more visible and better information and easier to handicap. And that's just the ACC. You mentioned that you make SMU 8 points less in a power rating than Miami. I just checked mine, -7. So what would the money line be on a neutral? I'm guessing Charlotte this year. It's in Charlotte again. Would you make that Miami -7, -8 against SMU? And what would the money line be on that? Because it would be probably close to 250 to 330. So Miami -140.
Right, 300 to 350 is where I think you would end up. Assuming like this is what the world looks like now.
But the first question is where would Miami lose enough games on this schedule to finish 3rd in the conference? I can't name one. I really can't, literally, because of who they dodge, right?
Well,
No
there's
SMU,
my argument. I mean, I think they're going to lose to Notre Dame, and then I think that they are going to lose one more just by Mario. But like that doesn't get them to third place.
I mean, how many losses did Duke have and got into the championship game last year in conference? Right? Like I think Miami has to lose
5 games.
I think Miami has to lose 3 games to potentially get knocked out of the ACC championship. So considering that I don't think that's going to happen, Miami's listed minus 140 by our sponsor, DraftKings, and the money line would be 280 to 330. Like you have to play Miami minus 140 for the conference. There's just the probability of them not getting that second slot to be in the championship game is just it's astronomical. Like there's no way they're not playing the championship game. They win it, whatever. You're going to take a minus 140 ticket into a game where they're going to be lined better than a touchdown. You can come out and get out of
you can always middle it. You could always middle it if you're
right.
depending on how you feel. Your base, I mean, obviously anything can happen, and it's Mario. But like that bet feels like you're betting against Mensa not getting hurt, right?
And I don't have to worry about Notre Dame.
If Mensa gets hurt, they basically drop down to like
how
SMU.
far?
They become like SMU.
Right. You take 8 points off, and then they're still at the top of the conference. I mean, it's and then you're it's not minus 140, and then you could be carrying a minus 110 in the game, but still.
Yeah, I as of right now, I have it as like 6.5, but I haven't done a ton of work on backup quarterbacks. So, but yeah, I would still have them power rated first in the conference, even if Mensa goes down and their backup situation isn't great.
And the thing is Carson Beck wasn't like fantastic till he got to the playoff. Like once he got to the playoff, he was threading the needle on every drop back, and I don't know what clicked for him. It was a really amazing run by Miami last year, playing well on both sides of the ball.
All right, let's move on to the team we just mentioned, SMU. Win total is sitting at 8.5, juiced to the over. They are 7-1 to win the conference, the second favorites. You have some promising players coming back that you can build around. Kevin Jennings comes back for his third year, and he was presumably going to be healthy. He was dealing with a nagging injury for most of the year. And then you have 3 really, really good and experienced offensive linemen in PJ Williams at tackle, who's probably going to, he might go in the first round. Bates at center, Nichols at guard. I mean, that is as good of a trio on the offensive line as you'll find probably in the country. So now their depth is real young, so the offensive line does have to stay healthy. And we'll see who gets that other tackle spot. It could be Chambly. There could be this redshirt freshman Odoms, who's a stud. But this offensive line is going to be very good. And right, they lose a couple. They lose Bird, their left tackle. So like, I don't even think he was bad, and he was like the weak point. He even got moved to left guard. So basically, you're just replacing Parr. You do lose Hibner, your tight end, to the NFL, and then you lose a couple of wide receivers and a couple tight ends, I should say, 2 tight ends and 2 wide receivers to the NFL. So your weapons, there's some questions there that they have to sort out, but they bring in, Yannick Smith from ECU, Hale from Alabama. They bring in a couple power 4 transfers at tight end. So if as long as Jennings is healthy and the offensive line stays healthy, this offense should cook. On the defensive side of the ball, there are more questions because you lose. Your defensive line got wiped out, as you like to say. I mean, they lost 30 of their 34 sacks because their defensive tackle Webb gone, NFL. Robertson gone to the NFL. Mba gone to the NFL. Smith gone to the NFL. So basically you lost like 4 guys up front that are now all on NFL rosters. And then you lose your 2 long-time safeties in Wachovia and Moses, who combined to start 8 seasons, in addition to a cornerback in Harmon, who's a little more replaceable. So they went to the portal, and that's really where they tried to bolster this roster. They bring in Lee from USF, Wyrick from UTSA, Thomas from Texas A&M. And then, some of these guys are, La Tech, JUCO, K-State. So they're trying to build this with numbers and production. But there could be a little bit of a drop-off on the defensive side of the ball because that defensive line that was so productive lost a lot. Now, their secondary wasn't very good last year. Their corner situation, they never could figure it out. So we'll see if they can this year. And they get Washington, who returns from injury.
A couple of good transfers in the secondary came in with Jimmy Wyrick and Jarvis Lee.
Yep, and Thomas from Texas A&M. So like their corners could actually be better, and you hope that it might be tough to replace Moses and Wachovia, but that's where they spent their resources. And their special teams were a disaster last year. Should be better. They bring in a kicker from New Hampshire who made 6 from 50 plus last year, so he'll be a fun one to watch. And their linebacker room is stacked, so they don't have to worry there. There is a new offensive coordinator, but Lashley's going to call plays. And their schedule is a joke. I mean, they play 4 of the bottom 5. They avoid Miami. They avoid Clemson. The hardest games on their schedule, I mean, they do go to Notre Dame. They're going to lose that, but that doesn't impact the conference race. The hardest games, arguably, are in the first 3 weeks.
Yep.
And, I mean, they go to Florida State, and then a couple weeks later, they go to Louisville. And maybe that's the difference, that Louisville has the leg up on SMU by getting that win and owning the tiebreaker. But good news for SMU is that, like, you have a returning quarterback in his 3rd year. You have an experienced offensive line. And, you know, in a league where there's not much returning production because everyone gets plucked, SMU's in the top 25 in returning production. I think the only other team in the top 25 is Tech. I mean, you look at the SEC and the Big Ten, like it's like all in the top 20. And then the ACC it looks like a G6 league with all the returning production numbers. So that helps that you have a lot of experience that you can lean on early with 2 of your most important games over the first 3 weeks on the road. What are you seeing with the Stangs?
Well, I mean, this is the 3rd year in a row. I know 2 years ago, we were just laughable scheduling, right? I was like on an island saying SMU is going to go to the championship game. This is a laughable schedule, and they made it. And here we are again. This is, again, a very advantageous schedule. I do like what Jennings got in the portal with ECU all-conference wide receiver Yannick Smith, running back Kendrick Raphael. Those are 2 guys I think that are going to be good pieces for Kevin Jennings, because Kevin Jennings does have his moments of making mistakes. So the more you can beef up that side of the ball, and a good offensive line is really going to help him be protected. Scheduling wise, I kind of want to throw out the first 3 games, and I'm a little bit nervous about the defensive line and what going on the road and playing Florida State, which there's no better for potential to be for Florida State to be a national contender than the very first game of the season when the fan base is riled up thinking that they can, be a part of the national scene. So SMU going in there with questions on the defensive line makes me a little bit worried against Florida State. So if I chalk, and I make it a 2-point game, so if you chalk that up, as a loss, you're going to beat UC Davis. But then again, Louisville can run the ball too. So I'm a little bit worried about the defensive line 2 out of the first 3 games. But after that, there is a 7-game stretch with a very nicely placed bye in the middle. And in those 7 games, SMU will be playing at home 6 times. 6 out of the 7 against Missouri State, who, oh, by the way, the new head coach is their old offensive coordinator. Shouldn't be any issues in that game. Boston College, Virginia, Cal. Then they're going to go to Syracuse, right? Not a problem. I don't expect a lot out of Virginia Tech. We'll talk about them later. And then Wake Forest, right? I mean, this is 7 wins in a row. And so while I'm worried about the defensive line against Florida State and Louisville for the first couple of weeks of September, I expect that line to be fortified and to be much better, at least to win the last game of the season against Stanford, which makes 8 games. So really, I like the over here. I project them 9.6, but this comes down to coin flip at FSU, coin flip at Louisville. How does the defensive line perform? That's going to make or break. And then I don't expect to win against Notre Dame, but obviously, they're going to have to win out if they don't get Florida State and Louisville, and there's going to be chances to kind of play on that. But this is a very advantageous schedule. Over 8.5 is not a lot of money, but there is definitely an easy path to 9 here. That 7 games in the middle is just going to be fantastic. And Cal's a revenge game on October 24th. I mean, they kept the Ponies from going to the ACC championship game. They should be extremely fired up for that.
Yeah, I mean, I would say the good news is Louisville has some injuries, and they're getting them early, and we'll talk about that next. So you get them early. I know you have to go to Louisville, but that could make all of the difference. It would be funny, though. I think if they split just Florida State and Louisville, they should go over. I project 8.9.
Because UC Davis, Stanford, and then the 7-game stretch is 9. So,
but the Stanford game could be tricky based on, remember, it's after Notre Dame, right? You're traveling to Notre Dame, then to Stanford. Remember last year, SMU, all they had to do was go to Cal and win to get to the ACC championship, and they lost 38-35. So it would be very SMU for that to happen. But yeah, besides Miami, this is the team I'm most confident in. It could have been Louisville, but there's some injury concerns that have me a little skittish. Let's get into Louisville. Louisville win total 8.5, juiced a bit to the under. This is a typical Louisville team under Brom. It is transfers galore. You could have 8 transfers starting on the offense, right? I mean, the offense, you lose your quarterback, Moss, who signed with the NFL. You lose your right tackle, who's now in the NFL. Your center is now in the NFL. Your receiver, Lacey, who's also an important return man in the NFL. You lose your right guard. Your left tackle, who's also in the NFL. Your right guard at Texas Tech. Your tight end to Duke. So what do? They went into the portal, and they just said, let's reload. So you get Keenholz from Ohio State, former 5-star, to be your quarterback. You bring in a left guard from BC, who I like. The right tackle from South Carolina, who I like. A wide receiver from Richardson, deep threat, who I think can open up the offense for them. Another wide receiver from Florida State. And then you had to try to rebuild the offensive line. That's where I have some of the questions outside of the BC and South Carolina guys. You bring in a guard from Georgia Southern, who you play tackle there. You got to hope that he hits. You bring in a center from Western Kentucky. Might be a depth piece. But the most important position is left tackle. So they went out and they got Anwar O'Neal from Delaware. And their tackle pieces, right? You're going to have Henry at one tackle from South Carolina, who started at South Carolina. And then you have O'Neal from Delaware. Now he is stepping on the class, but he's hurt. And now there's people were saying he might miss half the year. Now they're saying maybe back by week 3. So, and that you have freshman backups. I don't know how the offensive line is going to shake out, but that's definitely a concern going up against Ole Miss.
Well, especially what they did in the spring game, right? I mean, so in the spring game, it was a little bit surprising to everyone that Keenholz, who is way more athletic than any quarterback that Brom has ever had, they were running QB runs, draws, and speed options. And they showcased that during the spring. And Brom's like, we've never used that here, but we have the ability to do it with our quarterback. And if Keenholz was supposed to be a part of some new speed option QB draw run game, this is, I mean, what I'm hearing from you, this makes it even worse.
Yeah. And the biggest thing is their best player and one of the best running backs in the country, and Isaac Brown, is going to be their bell cow, is dealing with an injury. Held out, and he was dealing with injuries last year. He didn't really participate in the scrimmage, and it's just like Brom's not really good.
Yeah, Brom, like the other day, said I'm trying to get him up to speed to take part in full practice. I'm like, what does that mean? Like, is he not eating enough? Is he not sleeping enough?
So you're going to have a brand new offensive line with a brand new offensive line coach. You lost your offensive line coach, who's been very good to Alabama. So there's definitely questions on this offense with a quarterback who has no experience. But it is Brom. He usually figures this stuff out. So you tend to give him the benefit of the doubt. But there are now questions on this offense that really only returns Brown and Robinson at left guard, who might not even start. And then on the defensive side of the ball, you lose a lot on the defensive line, especially in the interior. But you do have a much more solid core and foundation to rely on. Holloway at corner, Watts, who will probably play nickel, Lubin is one of the best defensive ends in college football, Capers at linebacker, Green at linebacker. And then you get Stanquan Clark, who's a stud back from injury. And you got your starting safety back the other day, Hutchinson, in the 5-for-5 rule. So both your starting safeties are back. You get your linebacker back from injury, who's very good. You have your best corner back. So you had a corner from Kentucky. You had a starting corner from Kentucky, a starting safety from Iowa. The biggest question I have here is just the interior defensive line. It's like guys from Kentucky and Purdue who haven't really shined. So So I do think they take a step back at defensive tackle. But their defensive backs, I think, should be pretty salty. And then the last thing I'm worried about with Louisville is their special teams. They had a top 5 special teams last year, and then they lose everything. You lose Lacey returning, one of the best returners in college football. You lose your good kicker. You lose your good punter. You have a Rhode Island kicker, an Eastern Kentucky punter. So does that flip one of these close games? And it's one of the things that worries me against Ole Miss, because Ole Miss is elite special teams, and Louisville's might struggle. And all these practices, Brom keeps talking about how he's pissed at the special teams. So we'll see. 2 new defensive coordinators. Co-defensive coordinators are internal hires. What are you seeing with Louisville?
I mean, it's heavy juice on the under 8.5. I like the under 8.5 here. I mean, I projected at 7.5, but for a lot of the things that you said, Keinholz's connection with Trey Richardson from Vandy and LaWayne McCoy from FSU, they're just imperative to keep defenses from loading 8 in the box to stop this, whatever this rushing attack is going to be. Isaac Brown, no Isaac Brown, Keinholz running speed option, not running, whatever that is, got to keep 8 out of the box. Now, when you take it under 8.5 and you're eating this kind of juice, where are they going to get the 4 losses? I see 6 potentials on here. These are they're either underdogs, or I got it as coin flips. That's at Ole Miss, SMU.
That's neutral Nashville.
Neutral. At NC State, Florida State, Pitt, and at the end of the season at Kentucky, which I line like 2. And I expect Kentucky's best game. They're one of those teams where their best game is probably going to be the last game of the season. And I love backing first-year coaches in the second half of schedules, because they're still putting their stuff in place and players are still playing hard for them. They are never a corpse. So there are at least 6 spots in here where I can see Louisville dropping a game. So under 8.5 with the heavy juice, and at least 6 games here. And maybe you just want to go ahead and like kind of pile on Ole Miss on a parlay card, and and like hold that parlay card open till SMU. Or you can just take that heavy juice under. There are options here.
Yeah, I by the way, I misspoke. Robinson, who returned, they're going to move him to center, I believe. Yeah, I project 8 after adjusting for some of these injury concerns and some of the special teams concerns. But they do avoid Miami. They avoid Clemson. They get 5 ACC home games, and they host SMU. And their 2 toughest games are in September on paper, right, with Ole Miss and SMU. Mm-hmm. One of them's at home, one of them's on a neutral. And Brom always starts fast. His teams are so good early because he usually has like this new bag that he developed in the offseason. They are nails early. Now, they'll usually drop a game late. So at Georgia Tech, at UNC, Pitt, then at Kentucky, 3 and 4 on the road. I wouldn't be surprised if they drop 1 or 2 of those. But they could get Ole Miss. I mean, Brom is the king of upsets, but they still could go under. I mean, there's definitely a lot of concerns. But like Brom has proven that he knows how to manage these, just like, hey, turn the roster over. He does it as well as anybody. But there's definitely questions. And if Isaac Brown isn't healthy, and then you're playing a freshman left tackle, and your interior defensive line doesn't figure it out, it could get ugly. Or the upside is they could go to the ACC championship game. So nothing for me. I don't mind your underplay numbers wise after adjusting lately. I'm with you.
We don't fade Brom very often, no matter who he's coaching. But the bag that you're talking about is relying on an offensive line and Keinholz's legs. And that's right now; those are both questionable.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, if you want to join me on, I'm not as confident as I was before with some of these injuries, and maybe everything will be fine, although the left tackle won't be. Brom has lost 8 times over the past couple of years, only once by more than a touchdown, and he's 12-1 before the month of October. And he's just going all the way back. He's the king of upsets and the king of covering as a large dog, and king against higher ranked teams and ranked teams. All right, let's move on to Clemson. A bunch of nobodies, as Dabo said. Clemson win total 7.5, juice to the over, 16-1 to win the conference. This program on life support. They lost 4 games or more in 3 straight years, which they hadn't done since 2011. They had 4 home losses last year. They had 5 the previous 9 combined. It's the first losing home season since 1988. They were 26. They're only 26-14 since 2023. 15-9 in the ACC. Between 2015 and 2020, they lost 7 games total. They lost 14 since 2023. Bring in Chad Morris to solve everything.
Don't forget 8 conference games here since they have the big non-conference game.
Yep. They only face one of the top 6. They avoid SMU, they avoid Louisville, they avoid Virginia, they avoid Pitt. They face none of the top half of the league on the road. Now, they don't get Stanford or BC, the bottom 2, but none of the top half of the league on the road. Can Dabo actually get it done at home is the question. Now, they actually did add some defenders from the portal. Probably your starting safeties, Carter and Myrick from ODU and Southern Miss. Maybe a starting corner from Penn State and Washington. And then, some defensive line help because they lost a lot. I mean, it's pretty stunning that this team went 7-6 last year. They had 9 players drafted, and you lost 6 multi-year starters on defense. Terrell at corner goes in round 2. Woodaz goes in round 4. Woods goes in round 1. Parker goes in round 2. K-Park goes in round 5. And then you lose your nickel to Georgia, your safety to Vandy, your defensive tackle to LSU. I mean, that's what? 5 guys drafted from the defense and 3 others who went to the SEC and might start. That's pretty crazy. So, and now you're dipping into some lower levels and hoping some depth can step up. Now you do bring back Brown at linebacker, Hampton at corner, Held at defensive end, Lawson at defensive end. So you have, 4 or 5 guys, Hannafin, who might not start, but he'll play at safety. So you got about 5 guys. And then you're going to rely on the portal, which Dabo hasn't done often, but credit to him for actually doing that this year. And then on the offensive side of the ball, there's a lot of losses there as well. You lose, by my count, 6 multi-year starters. Most of them started 3 or 4 years. Your right tackle Miller goes in the first round. Klubnik, your quarterback, who started 3 years, goes in the 4th round. You lose your 2-year starting center. Your 4-year running back to round 5. Your left tackle, who started for 3 years, just signed an NFL contract. And then your wide receiver, who went in round 3. So what do you have besides a bunch of nobodies? You bring in Johnson from SMU to help your running back room. And you do have Davidson back. Your wide receivers are fine because you have Moore and Wesco coming back. Your tight end, Pat Henry, comes back. And then the questions are going to be all about the offensive line, in addition to a quarterback battle between Vizina and Reynolds. Vizina, I thought, would have won it by now, but apparently Reynolds is getting rid of the ball quick, and that's what they want to see. But the offensive line, it's like you're going to have Sewell, who you can rely on. He's moving to center. Jacobs comes back. He showed flashes last year. I think he's going to move to left tackle. And then you're going to need some other guys to step up. And you lost a lot of pro talent. And we'll see if they can also get some of these other freshman receivers, Salmon and Burrows, to step up. But this is going to come down to the offensive line and Chad Morris's play calling. Was Taj Boyd walking through the door? I mean, what is this, 2014? And
stealing my thunder.
Yeah,
my old boy here.
I also worry about the defensive line. Like, you're going to need Adams and Burley to step up in the interior. They were depth guys last year, but it's shocking how bad they were on defense last year, given all the talent they had. So maybe it's addition by
Tom Allen comes in. You don't expect that out of a Tom Allen defense.
Yeah, it's pretty shocking. But this is still a homegrown team. But they lost a lot of guys that they were developing over the years. They were starting here for 3 years, 2 years, 3 years. So we'll see if they can find a rushing attack. They only ran for 3.9 yards per carry last year. It's pathetic in the ACC. But the schedule breaks their way. I lean over. I think maybe they're getting a little bit too disrespected, and Dabo's going to use the disrespect card. And, maybe some of these younger guys have a chip on their shoulder, and some of the guys who knew they were going pros were, I don't know, were they just not all locked in last year? I don't really know what went wrong. But the schedule works for. They start at LSU, you get Georgia Southern, UNC at home, you go to Cal, pretty tough spot because you have Miami on deck. Mm-hmm. Bye. Charleston Southern at home. Va Tech at home. You go to Florida State, who is off a bye. At Syracuse, Georgia Tech at Duke, South Carolina at home. Like, if they can just get decent quarterback play, there's plenty of opportunities for them to get to 8 or 9 wins. What are you seeing with Clemson?
Hey, everybody. Chad Morris is back coaching in college, no longer in the Texas high schools and no longer leading Arkansas to an 0-16 SEC schedule. I heard an interview with him the other day, and just a flood of memories hit me. Here's a couple of things Chad Morris likes to say in case you don't remember or you're in your 20s and you didn't follow this back before the pandemic. He likes to say left lane, hammer down, full tilt boogie, pop the clutch, and the hungry cat hunts best. This guy is a collection of sound bites that may have gotten him his job back. And now there's like this big slide in the office that Dabo goes down every day. Like, I feel like I'm taking a trip to McDonald's, like old school McDonald's when I was a kid. This program is sinking, in my opinion. Like, we're not going to use the portal until we had to. Now we're using it. We can't get caught up on the pieces that we need to get. Replacing 4 offensive line starters. Like, they were
number 1 in returning production last year, by the way. And now they're 60th.
And then on the other side of the ball, for reasons unknown, but what I was whispered to was that the defense just can't absorb Tom Allen's what he wants to execution-wise on defense. And I'm just like, this is Tom Allen. Like, he's called defenses everywhere. The only reason why Indiana had a pulse in 50 years is because Tom Allen was the coach, right? And so let's get back to the real crux of this. I'm going under, right? I what do I make this? Where's my number? I make it 7 flat. So I'm under 7.5 plus money. But let's talk about, is Chris Vizinia capable of running a smash mouth spread? Because that's what who were Chad Morris's quarterbacks? You've already named it. Taj Boyd and Deshaun Watson. But you know who is capable? Tate Reynolds is capable. And I don't know if they're just like not wanting to like throw Vizinia in the trash, but I believe this is Tate Reynolds' offense at some point, but at the same time, his youth and inexperience, like, you're going to live with that too. I don't know what's going on with Gideon Davis. He was supposed to be like a 5-star next coming of everything at running back, turned into nothing. And then the schedule, like LSU. Is that number going to run, by the way? I think it's going to go up. I think LSU is going to get hammered. I think they're going to get steamed. And then Cal before Miami, at Cal? No. Miami? No. Virginia Tech? Like, James Franklin and Dabo, that might be the most mishandled clock game in the history of college football. FSU, who's off go ahead.
It could beat Miami. Just because it could be one of Miami's. It could be one of Miami's games. That's it. That's the only reason.
At Florida State, who's off a bye, back-to-back travel the next week. Syracuse is horrific. But I mean, Dabo's lost up there before. South Carolina. Or wait, no, they beat him down at home. South Carolina. Here's the thing I couldn't believe about South Carolina. I didn't even know this until I was looking at it this morning. South Carolina, since 2019, the visitor always wins in this series. Who's the visitor? South Carolina. So
I can't get it. I'm at 7-9. I wanted to fade them, but I can't. My number is actually slightly lean over. But
this is really strange with you sitting on the other side of the fence and I'm on the underside.
I was all 2 years ago. I usually nail Clemson. 2 years ago, I was all about them getting to the college football playoff, winning the ACC. Now, granted, I got lucky because Cristobal pulled a Cristobal at Syracuse. And then last year, you were all about them. Everyone was all about them, and I was selling them. So this year, I think they win 8 games. But I could also see it going very south. There's a lot of uncertainty with this offensive line, the defensive line, the offensive coordinator I don't like, and we don't know if they have a quarterback answer. It's still not
decided. How much have things changed? Like in 2017, you and I started this podcast. We'd show up and just say Clemson and mic drop. Like, that's it. Like national title. Just drop the mic. And now they're going to drop Dabo. It's got to happen. This Chad Morris is worse than grasping at straws. You're in the quicksand with a handout.
All right, let's move on to Vatek. Vatek win total 6.5, heavily juiced to the over. They bring in James Franklin. Brent Pry stays and is the defensive coordinator. This is a team that brings back, could argue, 13, 14 starters. Top 5 in returning production. Ethan Grunkmeyer, the transfer from Penn State, is going to be under center. They also bring in 6 other Penn State players on the 2 deep, led by tight end Reynolds, who's probably going to play on Sundays eventually, like most former Penn State tight ends. It sounds like you don't like this team. I think there's a lot to like about them. Now, part of it is I'm super low on like every other team, but like they have the returning production, and then they have the returning production where the offensive line, second year with their offensive line coach, they had a lot of guys that got experience. They've dealt with a bunch of injuries. They had an Oklahoma tackle, and I just think this entire offensive line with another year of experience, finding the right combo is going to be better. You get Hawkins back at running back. Cunningham, by the way, their guard comes back from injury. Green comes back a wide receiver who I like. And then you're just plugging in gaps with like Penn State guys, former Ohio State guys. Now, maybe not experienced, but you basically took a top 5 returning production team with 13 returning starters, which is a rarity in the ACC, and you're plugging in a bunch of Big Ten pedigree guys from Ohio State and Penn State. On the defense side of the ball, the cornerback room is loaded with Brown, Murray, Williams, Clark, White, Chadwick, and Mosley. Like, I really like the gets of Chadwick from UConn. Mosley comes in from Penn State, and I love White from Troy. And then, you get your safeties back in Reddish and Flowers. Copeland is a stud at defensive tackle. Now, there's other questions along the defensive line. You're going to need like Stevens and Abbey to step up. And linebacker is probably my biggest question on the team. Woodson going to Bama really hurt them. But I think there's a lot to like here. They had a ton of injuries last year. They got a ton of young guys who got experience on the offensive line and the secondary. I really like their secondary now. Their special teams should be good. I love their special teams because Love, one of the best kickers in the country, and his younger brother's actually freshman on the depth chart at kicker as well. Now, it is a tough road slate. They have 5 ACC road games. They go to Clemson, to SMU, to Miami in the second half of the year. But if things click, and I like this team early, they could start 7-0. VMI, ODU at home, at Maryland, at BC, Pitt, at Cal, Georgia Tech. And I'm low on Georgia Tech. I'm lower than the market on Pitt. BC is horrible. Maryland's already starting to circle the drain. Should be VMI and ODU to start things off.
Circle the drain.
So, and I like their secondary, which is going to be important against Cal. We'll get to Cal, but this is my only over I like. Yeah. It's expensive, but I think this team gets to 7 wins easily.
So, not to like poo-poo on Virginia Tech, and not that it's not that I dislike them. Like, I think the floor is bowl team. I think they're at least a bowl team. I think that this is going to be the worst version of Virginia Tech for like the next 10 years, because what Franklin is doing when it comes to recruiting class, I think he assembled a top 25 recruiting class in like a week. And now the next year's recruiting class, I think, is ranked 6th. And the work that he did in the portal, like to get this roster together, like Franklin was embarrassed, right? Lost to UCLA, lost to Northwestern, fired. You're on college game day in a suit trying to, state your case about how it was handled at Penn State. Franklin's an emotional guy. I mean, he is going to be coaching with a chip on his shoulder for the next couple of years. It's not that I dislike Virginia. I just think that this is going to be the worst version of Virginia Tech. I project them at 7 wins. So when you're looking at over 6.5 minus 170, that, I would rather take 40 cents of juice off that. Would I even go over 7 minus 130? No. But there is one game on this schedule. And by the way, like right guard Johnny Garrett has a long-term injury. So watch that on the offensive line with these guys. They're going to need him. And also with Franklin.
No, I saw that, but I think that, like,
is he going to be okay? Or
no, I just think that Howland, who they brought in from Oklahoma, can swap him and he'll be a better version.
Okay.
Like, they had 6 guys who started games last year on the offensive line, and then they had a bunch of Power 4 guys. So I'm not too worried about the offensive line. I didn't even think Garrett was that great. So I'm fine there. And like their tight ends, they're also going to use a lot of multiple tight end sets, I think, with Gosnell, Reynolds. That should help out the blocking as well. I just think the whole operation is going to look a lot smoother because the offensive line is going to have such a higher floor this year. But go ahead.
So keep this in mind. Franklin's first year at Vandy, 6 wins. Then he went to 9. At Penn State, he went 7-7. Then his third year, he went to 11. So, this team is going to get better as the days go by. And I think the last thing I'll say from a betting standpoint, so I'm going to pass on this because it's so heavily juiced on over 6.5, and the floor is 6. But I will say this: there's one game on this schedule that I'm going to bang the second openers come out on Sunday, right after you and I get done listening to voicemails. On September 19th, Virginia Tech's playing Maryland, and you mentioned circling the drain. I'm telling you right now, James Franklin owns Mike Locksley and Maryland.
Boy, do I know.
2022 to 2024, the net score between those two teams was Penn State 125, Maryland 22, blanking them 30-0 once. Now, I get it. There's a difference.
A lot of money on a couple of those games.
I get there's a difference in talent level of rosters, but Franklin either has it out or he's got Locksley figured out, or I mean, I don't know what's going on here, but Franklin owns Maryland, and I project that game like right now, like Maryland Pick'em +1. No, that ain't no. I will have a roll ready to go on Sunday at 1:00 when openers come out.
All right, let's move on to let's hit Florida State. Florida State win total 5.5, heavily juiced to the over, 40-1 to win the conference. By the way, Vatek's 25-1. Didn't mention that, but Florida State 40-1, over 5.5, heavily juiced to the over. They're coming off a 5-7 year. They did go 0-4 in one possession games. They were better than their record, but this year, a lot of questions because you look at their rosters and they're like a feeding ground to Power 4. Offense, you lose your center, left tackle, quarterback, right guard, left guard, right tackle. You lose your tight end to SMU, your running back Northwestern, a guard to the NFL. So you lose a lot on offense. You do have good skill position guys. So your wide receivers, Robinson, Danzy, running back Chroma, Boggs. Look out for true freshman Lopez as well. So you got good skill position guys. Everything else on the offense is a question. You bring in, Ashton Daniels to be the quarterback. And then the offensive line. I think the offensive line, like Xavier Chaplin, he was bad at Auburn. He comes with Daniels at left tackle. He has some pedigree and experience, so high floor there. A Purdue guy at center, a Bowling Green guy at right guard, the Stephen F. Austin guy at right tackle. This is, and then your I think Otto, who's a depth guy, is going to start. The offensive line looks pretty rough. You bring in a tight end from ECU and Wisner from Texas. But everything else on the offense is a question for me besides the skill positions. On defense, you got rated. You lost Wilson to the NFL. You lose your safety Little to Ohio State. You lose your other safety Joseph to Ole Miss. You lose your linebacker to Texas. You lose a corner to Auburn. You lose your best player to round 4 of the NFL draft and the defensive tackle Jackson. So I look at what they did, and they have a little bit more returning experience on defense, but not a lot of guys who you really trust. And then you look at who they bring in the portal. It's like Southern Miss, South Alabama, Texas State, UNC, Duke, Illinois State. So you're getting plucked by the top 2 conferences, and then you're going to this is not your typical Florida State team.
Is this where we cross from the top beef to the middle portion of the ACC that you and I are talking? Yeah.
So, it's the defensive line in particular looks rough to me. They need Wynn, who was not good as a freshman. He was banged up. They need Wynn to step up at nose tackle as a redshirt freshman and to replace Jackson, who was their best player. And then you lose your 2 really good safeties to Ohio State and Ole Miss, and arguably your best corner. So there's special teams are also a question. I wanted to buy this team because they were so unlucky last year.
Yep.
But I just didn't love what they did in the portal. And if they start off slow, is their quit factor? And the schedule's brutal. You're going to beat New Mexico State, but then you host SMU. I think I like SMU in that game. Spot-wise, it says Florida State, but historically, teams that play first against teams that haven't do have a leg up for what it's worth. But then you go to Bama, who has revenge. You go to Louisville. You go to Miami. You host Clemson. You go to Pitt off of a bye. And then you close the season with NC State and Florida at home. Like, the floor here is 3 to 4 wins. Now the ceiling, if some of these younger guys hit and they hit in the portal, I guess is 8 wins. They haven't won on the road in 2 years. So can they even beat BC on the road? They only faced one of the bottom 9 teams. They faced 7 of the top 8. Schedule's brutal. Norvell's going to call plays on the offense with Malzahn gone. New quarterback for the 3rd straight year. It just feels like this is headed nowhere fast.
I hate that my projection is 8 and I'm on the over here, plus money, over 6.5, plus 144.
8. Wow.
And I was looking at it like, 2.5 points to the power rating went from second order win total because they were so unlucky. And then they had a couple of points. They had a couple of points in the positive for experience. There's a difference between bringing snaps in, and this is the whole problem with grading on the portal. You can bring 5,000 snaps in, but what's the grade of those snaps that you bring in, right? And I think that's where you and I are having a little bit of discrepancy here. Like, they did bring guys in, but when you're looking at South Bama, Southern Miss, Coastal on your defense, what's the skill level of these guys, right? I don't have any questions about Deuce Robinson. I don't have a question about Danzy. At least there's targets there for Ashton Daniels to get to. I'm not an Ashton Daniels guy. I still cannot figure out how he got there and was immediately named quarterback over Kevin Sperry. Like, I don't even know if there was a competition. Daniels has 30 big time throws to 41 turnover worthy plays. He's had 17 fumbles in his career. Like, man, it just sounds like numbers that come from a Florida State quarterback that ruined their season. I do like Wisner coming over from Texas. Hopefully he's at full health and can replicate the 1,000 yards that he had in Austin, his time with Texas. I like 2 buys because of the early game. And to me, there's 5 wins on the schedule and there's 5 coin flips. So I'm not sure if you agree, but they're going to win on the road against Boston College. They should. If they don't, Norvell just needs to pack a box. All right, but New Mexico State.
What if that's red bandana game and it's after Clemson and Miami?
Is that the red bandana game? Have they named?
I don't know. I don't think they name it yet, but that's after. That's after. By the way, they go to BC after a 4-game stretch of Virginia at Louisville at Miami, Clemson. Yeah. It's a brutal spot. They haven't won on the road in 2 years.
But come on, it's Boston College.
No, it's going to be Rutgers. It's going to be Rutgers, I think, the red bandana game.
A more winnable game. I think New Mexico State, Central Arkansas, and then I've got Virginia at BC and NC State marked as wins. At least Virginia and NC State are coming to Tallahassee. And then coin flip games, from a mathematical perspective, what do I have SMU lined? I have SMU lined as a 2-point favorite in Tallahassee. Like, I don't have the power rating off that far. I don't know what you make the game, but it's not that big of a difference for me. And then a bye before you go to Alabama, who they've beaten before. At Louisville, we talked about the Louisville game. Clemson and Florida are both coin tosses from a mathematical perspective. So I got 5 wins and 5 coin tosses. I'm going over 6.5.
I lean over. Can't get that. I think the SMU game is their season. Because if they lose that, and they could win it, it's coin flippish. If they lose that, I'm sorry, but they're losing at Bama. They're going to beat New Mexico State. They'll beat Central Arkansas. But if they lose SMU and then they lose Bama, they're 2-2. And then if they beat Virginia at home, I don't like this Virginia team. We'll get to that.
Yeah, me neither. That's why I put them.
They're 3-2. I think they lose at Louisville. They're 3-3. In order to get, can they go 4-2 over the? Can they even go 3-3 in a final 6-game stretch of at Miami, Clemson, at BC, at Pitt, NC State, and Florida? It's not a given. I lean over with you. I'm not disagreeing, but I'm not.
I think you and I have. Like scars from believing in this team, right? And telling everybody we believe in this team. It's like year after year this happens, but Hey, math says go. So here we go.
All right, let's hit on. We've hit Miami, SMU, Louisville, Clemson, Tech, and Florida State. Let's knock out. I'll leave it up to you. Do you want to knock out Pitt or Virginia right now?
I think we both have a lot to say about Virginia, so why don't we do Pitt first?
Okay. Yeah, we can close up.
I've never seen a team piss you off like Virginia last year. Like I said, I'm riding this voodoo train, and you said, no way. That was a season.
Yeah. Well, we can get into the Virginia voodoo, but we'll start with Pitt. Pitt win total 7.5, juice to the over 20-1 to win the conference. Randy Bates is gone, new defensive coordinator, the same system. Yeah, assistant since 18 takes over. Lost their D-line coach though as well. This team, they just don't have a ton of money. I mean, they're like, if you look at the talent they're bringing in, they have like 12, 13 returning starters, but like the talent that they're bringing in is very questionable. So you look on the offensive side, Mason Heinzel comes back. I'm not a fan. He gets away with so many throws, but he could improve this year.
He won a few bets for me last year when he became the starter.
He did. They lost their 2-year starting wide receiver to Texas Tech, another starting wide receiver. Des Reed might come back, I'm hearing. He signed with the Bills and then got cut for an injury out with the 5-5 rule. He's like, I don't know. They lose their starting center to Vandy, who started for 2 years. Like, their starting receivers are going to be like Blue Hicks, Lee, and a sophomore, and Kinsler, who used to be at West Carolina. There's a lot of West Carolina flavor because of their offensive coordinator. Who did they add? It's like, I trust Bear, their right tackle. He's a 3-year starter, but like everyone else in the offensive line they bring back, meh. Coretta's moving to center. He's okay, but like Stanley and Williams are horrible. So they add like a guard from Akron, a left tackle from Penn, another wide receiver from Western Carolina. Like, their backup quarterback, by the way, is a backup from Texas State. So if Heinzel, I'm not even a fan of, gets hurt, like, this gets ugly quick. But I'm not in love with, like, Turner's okay at running back. I'm not in love with anything on this roster besides, like, on the offense, besides, like, their right tackle. So, like, and then on defense, you lose your 2 stud linebackers who started for multiple years. One goes to Texas. One gets drafted in the 4th round. You lose a 3-year starting safety who was okay. You lose another starting safety who was bad. You lose a defensive tackle to Notre Dame, a 2-year starting cornerback who I liked, and another cornerback to the NFL. So who do you have replacing them? It's like a linebacker from Purdue, a linebacker from Memphis, a defensive tackle from Tulane, a cornerback from Slippery Rock, a cornerback I do like from Ohio and Auburn and Strader, a nose tackle from Illinois who didn't really play. So, like, just the talent going out, there's the talent going in because of the lack of money it's pretty drastic. And then, I mean, they're going to need Garrier to step up at safety. There's some pieces I like on the defense, like Harrison at corner, Brookins at safety. Their defensive line has some juice and some experience. But there's a lot of questions. They have questions at punter and kicker as well. There's just not a lot of money. So, like, the roster is getting drained of talent. So now the offensive line, there is a lot of experience. I'm just not in love with it. They're due to have some better health up there, but I just don't love this roster overall. The depth is really concerning in a number of positions. Now, they have a very easy first 7. Like, I want to fade this team, but I'm afraid they're going to start, like, in typical Pitt fashion, 7-0 with like a plus 12 turnover margin. Yep. They start with 4 home games against Miami, Ohio, UCF, Syracuse, and Bucknell. I do think they lose at Tech, but that's not – they could win that game. Then they're home against UNC. Then they're at BC. So, like, they could start 7-0, 6-1. Win total is 7.5, juice to the over. Then it gets a little tougher. You're at Miami. You're home against Georgia Tech, who I hate this year. Bye, home against Florida State, who could be a corpse.
Who's on back-to-back travel and Pitt's off a bye, yeah.
Yeah, and then you're at Ville and at Cal. So I project 7.35. So, like, slightly into the under. I don't like this team, but they do have 5 ACC road games. They do go to Miami and Louisville, but very easy first 7. You get 3 of the bottom 4. But this is not the year for Pitt for me. Do you see anything here?
Project 7.9. It's heavily juiced on the over 7.5. So it's going to be a pass for me because I can't make the case for it after everything that you said. And I agree with you. I'm not a big fan of the roster. The secondary is where most of the concerns are for me. And I don't think that's going to get tested until October 2nd against Virginia Tech. They do have some wide receivers I think can get deep on Pitt. Second half of the schedule is so much tougher with, Miami, FSU, and what Miami and FSU have at receiver. That could spell issues. Pitt going out to Cal the very last game of the season after Thanksgiving, that on back-to-back travel, that could be a problem. And I
What about their linebackers too? They're going from Lewis and Biles to Ward and Sanford. Like that's a huge drop off. Basically, NFL and Texas to Memphis and Purdue. Like,
yeah, I'm not. I think this ends in a 7-win season, and one of those Nardog 14-point underdog wins could be in there somewhere. And then he'll lose a game as a 20-point favorite. That's just how it works with him. So mathematically can't make a case for either side, but I'm definitely keeping my eyes open for a couple of offenses that could get into Pitt real quick.
Yeah, which makes this also. I mean, it's probably going to come down to the Cal game at the end when they go to Cal, which also makes this tricky. Is like I mentioned this earlier with the ACC quarterbacks, like a quarterback injury could like drastically change the projection for so many teams. Like if say JKS gets hurt for Cal, like that Pitt at Cal game becomes like an auto win almost, and then like that everything changes. All right, let's hit Virginia to close out this episode. Virginia win total 7.5, juice to the over, 20-1 to win the conference. Virginia is coming off a magical season where they won a school record 11 games. They have some resources now, but man, you look at I graded the talent that's coming in, and I had it as, including freshmen and portal, I had it as the worst in the conference, which is saying something. So who do they lose? They lose their quarterback, Morris, who's in the NFL now. They lose their right tackle.
He tried, right? He tried to apply.
Yeah, he's trying. They lose their right tackle. They lose a bunch of receivers. They lose their running back and another wide receiver to the NFL, one wide receiver to Oklahoma. But their offensive line should be very, very good. It's probably the most experienced offensive line in the country. I mean, you have Josie, Metcalf, and Boley back, who are all 3-year starters. And then
aren't they all grad students also? I think so. Yeah.
And then Monroe Mills, your right tackle, who's going to be an upgrade over Whitmer, who was bad. Their right tackle they lost. He was out for the year last year. He was so good at Texas Tech and Louisville. He's going to start at right tackle. And your right guard, Thomas, who transferred from Arkansas State, he was also out for the year. He's a multi-year starter, very good at Arkansas State. You have experience for days along the offensive line. Your quarterback is going to be Bo Pribula. And Eli Holstein also came from Pitt. Speaking of Pitt, he'll be the backup. And then, like, who was he throwing to? They bring in Martin from Kent State, Rico Flores from UCLA. I like Gibson from UMass. But they've had how many running backs do they need? You already have Pribula. They bring in Middlebrooks from Middle Tennessee State, who might start. Lewis from Tennessee, Beebe from UAB. They have so many running backs. Why didn't they? I mean, to go get I don't know. I would have spent somewhere else. But I assume they're gonna run the ball a lot with this offensive line. Pribula, some questions at wide receiver. They have some depth at tight end. So this might be a run-heavy offense. There's a very deep running back room. They can lean on this very good and experienced offensive line. Defensively, they get hit pretty hard. But you might get a couple defensive linemen, Holmes and Moore, back with the 5-5 rule. They're still trying to figure that out. They lose a lot of D-backs. Prevard goes to K-State. Carnley goes to Washington. Neal goes to the NFL. So there were some losses. I think there's a big drop in the secondary because I look at these corners and I'm like, I think their starters are going to be Agard from Wisconsin, Henderson from Rutgers, You're getting a Rutgers starter that wasn't Bo Melton to be your starter, and then they're probably going to move Platt from Army to nickel. I mean, these corners are – they bring in Hillman at safety from Michigan, and you'll have Minter back at safeties. Your safeties will be okay, but not the corner situation is bleak for me. This team had a horseshoe stuck up their ass last year. Their special teams should be good. You got like fifth-year starters, a kicker and punter. So, like, offensive line to rely on, good special teams, good deep running back room. But the rest, there's a lot of questions. The pass catchers, the corners. You do go to SMU, but you avoid the four other top teams. You don't get any of the bottom three, which hurts. There's just lots of the middle of the ACC in this schedule because you avoid Louisville, you avoid Miami, you avoid Clemson, you avoid Pitt. What are you seeing with UVA, who went 3-0 in overtime last year? I project like 7-4, and it's 7.5 heavily just to the over. I want to go under. I'm close. Are you with me or not?
Well, I'm at 7.2. So
you're lower than Virginia on me. Let's go. We're going under.
Yeah, and I mean you can go under 7.5, and it's got some pretty good plus money behind it. I have to look it up.
You can find like plus 120 out there.
Yeah, and I think there's things in the schedule where they get some breaks. There's no Miami and Clemson, but they have to travel to Dallas on a bye week. So, that's an advantage for them.
They also got the NC State game changed from Brazil to home, which helps.
Right. And now that number's steaming, right? I saw a couple of 5.5s move up to 6. I think it's going to get hit again. But look, there are things that you just can't quantify. I tried, like how the voodoo and the magic that these guys had. They beat Louisville, Wazoo, and North Carolina over a three-game stretch last year by 6 points. 6 points. Imagine what the season would have been if they wouldn't have pulled that off. Virginia rushers fumbled the ball 15 times last year. Only 4 were picked up by the opponent. I mean, you can't replicate that at all. The luck of the fumble was majorly in Virginia's favor last year. The offense settled for way more field goals than they should have. They finished 82nd in offensive finishing drives, yet Tony Elliott is named ACC Coach of the Year. All based on wins. Bo Prabula comes in, never been a fan. Threw for 2,000 yards last year, but he still has nearly a 4% turnover-worthy play rate. That's even in a clean pocket. In a clean pocket, you're making these kinds of mistakes. He's been in college football long enough that should be about 2.2%. There's a lot of things I dislike. The problem is the number for me mathematically gets so close. If you want to go under and put it on the board, let's do it, because I squeeze that voodoo juice the hell out of it. You even called me out last year. You're like, you don't believe in this team. They're against your numbers, and I said, yeah, because for once, why don't we ride a team that's got a horseshoe up their ass and have voodoo dolls all over their locker room? I don't know who that team's going to be this year, but once I spot them, like I'm going to ride. I think I'm going to pick one team a year that has a horseshoe up their ass and ride it. And this was that team last year. They don't have it anymore.
Yeah, I mean, my numbers aren't too. So, like, I'm trying to figure out how many of these unders I want to bet in the ACC because, like, one quarterback injury, and there's so many teams that I'm down on. Like, Virginia could win in 9 games.
What's your drop from Prabula down to Holstein?
Like a point. Yeah, I'm not a fan of either.
Me neither.
All right, let's knock out NC State real quick, and then we'll close up part 1. Over 7.5, slightly juiced to the under, 25-1 to win the conference. They're only team in the ACC with the same quarterback, head coach, offense coordinator, defense coordinator. CJ Bailey comes back at quarterback. A lot of potential. And then, like, that's about all I can say about this team. I mean, they lose their stud left tackle Peak to South Carolina, 3-year starter. They replace him with an ECU starter, who's okay, but that's a downgrade. They lose their center. They lose a 3-year starter at left guard. They're going to replace him with a depth guy. They lose 2-year starting receiver to Bama. Their stud tight end to the NFL draft. Another tight end to the NFL. Their stud running back to Texas. Their star receiver to USC. Another receiver to the NFL. They lost 9 of their top 15 snap counts on offense. 4 to the SEC or Big Ten, 3 to the NFL. Who'd they replace them with? Like a tight end from Montana State, a wide receiver from Buffalo, JoJo Trader from Miami. I mean, he's got potential, but a wide receiver from App State, a tight end from Oregon who's never played. Who comes back besides Bailey? It's like, Anderson is going to move from right tackle to left tackle. You have Jackson as one of your receivers. Spike Souls is going to move to center. And then you have Scott back at running back, who was their backup running back. Man, that's a lot of talent gone. And the talent coming in doesn't come close to sniffing what was there. Defensively, I mean, it's hard to believe with how bad that NC State defense was last year. But they have 5 guys on NFL rosters. Their defensive tackle, Cleveland, 3-year starter. Their linebacker, Fordham, was really good, 3-year starter. Their cornerback, 2-year starter. And then a pair of defensive ends in Harsh and Sloan. And then one of their defensive ends went to Michigan State. You do bring in King Mack from Penn State. Should be okay at safety. And the rest is like the linebacker from Miami, Aguirre. He should be okay. Then there's just some unproven guys from Penn State and Georgia. A linebacker from Tulane, a nose tackle from Marshall. The guys they brought back that were starters last year were not good, like Vic and Royal in the back end. They need a lot of the depth guys to step up. Victor, Shirley. It's just like what their defense looks like. It's a bunch of transfer linebackers. Now, I'm not sold on all of them, but there's some potential there. Their defensive line, which lost 3 to the NFL and 1 to Michigan State, it's all like we need the depth guys to step up. And then they're basically running back a bad secondary without their best corner. And then they add a couple of transfers who have some upside. I do like King Mack. But man, I want to love this team. And maybe it's addition by subtraction because this defense was horrendous. They allowed 118 explosive plays last year. They missed 138 tackles. It was so bad. And their special teams should be better. They're usually good under Doran. They were bad last year. I expect an improvement. I wanted to bet this team. I wanted to take a flyer on them because of the schedule. It's a cake road schedule.
Yeah.
Their road games are in conference. Stanford, FSU, and UNC. And now UVA to start the year. It's also an official ACC game. They also get FSU and UNC at the end of the year. Both those teams could be dead. Complete zombies. They get 5 ACC home games. Like Clemson, 0 of the top half of the league on the road. They face 6 of the bottom 7. There's no Miami, no Clemson, no SMU, no Pitt. They host Louisville. And, they start off the year against Virginia. Now, I think they're going to lose that game. But I don't like anything on this team except Bailey. So I just can't get there. I wanted to like this team. I wanted to take a flyer on them. I project 7.2. Another team I want to just sell, but I'm not going to because of the schedule, because of Bailey, and just because I don't like too many other teams. But no flyer for me on NC State. You got anything on the pack?
Yeah, I'm 7.9, so I'm sitting here staring at this schedule. This schedule is a dream for somebody to be a dark horse in the ACC. Some reason CJ Bailey sticks around, losing his top 5 pass catchers and his top running back.
And tight end, stud tight end, Jolly. Yeah, and left tackle, stud left tackle.
And I think, as great as his TD to INT ratio has been since he took over at quarterback, he does have a negative big-time throw to turnover-worthy play. So let's see what he does when he starts from scratch with his weapons. No Miami, SMU, or Clemson on the schedule. 6 of 7 at home from September 26th to November 14th. That includes a bye to get ready for travel to the West Coast against Stanford. I think the opener against Virginia is critical if you want to make a long shot bet on the ACC. I mean, before I got into the roster and before I saw what was coming back on offense, I'm thinking, well, with this schedule, I think this is a candidate to make the championship game, which is sitting at 6-1. But boy, that's a stretch. It seems like a stretch. I project close to 8 wins. That means they can only lose 4 if you're going to take the over here. You're going to lose at Virginia, at Vandy, Louisville, FSU. Where's that 5th loss?
Yeah, the problem is that given the schedule, and they're not going to. They probably won't win a tiebreaker now.
Right. So let's throw that ACC championship game 6-1 out the window. Where's the fifth loss to get them to 7 wins and kill an over ticket? That's what I've been struggling with here.
Well, they could lose to Virginia, Vandy, Louisville,
FSU.
I mean, yeah, but FSU and UNC, they could lose to UNC, but that FSU and UNC could be dead at the end of the year.
Did you just say they're going to lose to UNC?
They could at the end of the year, but they also could just be completely dead.
So you're back on the Gio Lopez train. Is that in part 2 of this podcast?
Gio Lopez is gone. That's why I'm on UNC. We're going to get to UNC in part 2. I will say, I will say, like, there's some upside with, like, they're relying on a bunch of power forward transfers, like, didn't pan out at better programs. If some of them hit, I'm still really worried about the defensive line, and the offensive line got worse. The wide receivers got worse. The running back got worse. The tight ends got worse. I will also say this team is going. God forbid this happens. CJ Bailey gets hurt week 1, is out for the year. They're going where would they go? 2-10.
Oof.
Look at this roster without CJ Bailey and their backup situation.
Well, they're still going to beat Richmond and App State.
Maybe.
Oof.
It'd be, oh man.
It might even be unwatchable. I don't know if I'll have a tile for it in one of my 16 boxes on my screens.
Yeah. All right. That'll do it for part 1. We hit Miami, SMU, Louisville, Clemson, Virginia Tech, Florida State, Pitt, Virginia, NC State. Part 2, we'll do Georgia Tech, Cal, Wake Forest, Duke, North Carolina, Syracuse, Stanford, BC, and Notre Dame, and then we'll sum up our ACC thoughts. Thanks to Colin for joining me. Thanks to our producer, David, on the back end. Most importantly, thanks to all of you for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe. Tell a friend, tell an enemy. Leave a 5-star review. It really helps us out this time of year. We're going to do giveaways for the hats. Futures, put your long shot future you like in the review. We're going to give away a bunch of stuff next week in our recap episode. We'll catch you in a few minutes on part 2. Cheers.